The title for my presentation is Black or White, No Gray. Black or white, no gray. Okay, that's the title of my presentation. Now, why are we talking about black or white and no gray? If we go to the Bible, to the book of Matthew chapter 12, verse 30, Matthew chapter 12, verse 30, it says, whoever is not with me is against me, and whoever does not gather with me scatters. Now, many a times as leaders, as we are leading the young people, be it the junior youths or the senior youths, what we need to understand is that leadership is a spiritual activity. Leadership is spiritual. So many a times when we look at leadership, we are thinking about the dynamics of power. We are thinking about dynamics of influence. But many a times we forget that when we are talking about leadership, we are talking about something that is spiritual. So Christ here is saying in the book of Matthew, whoever does not gather with me is against me, and whoever does not gather with me is scattering. We need to understand that in terms of leadership itself and in terms of the journey of Christianity and Adventism, it's either black or white and there is no gray. So when Christ is saying, whoever is not with me is against me, Christ is simply saying, it's either you are there or you are there. There is no middle ground. But many a times as leaders, we are looking for a middle ground. Many a times, even in our Christian walk, we are looking for a middle what? For a middle ground. But Christ is saying, it's either you are black or you are white. There is no gray. Many a times as leaders in our spiritual walk and in our leadership, we either want to be white or we want to be what? Black. But many a times we fail to be either, and we end up finding ourselves within the gray zone. Yet Christ is clearly stipulating to say, we have no gray zone in leadership. We have no gray in the journey of spirituality. It's either you are black or you are what? You are white. That's a difficult one, isn't it? Because the man of Romans 7 says, that which I want to do, I do not do. He finds himself in the gray area. He is aspiring to be white, but he is black. And as he aspires to be white, he finds himself within the gray zone. And this is the dilemma, and this is the fix that we have many a times as leaders, and many a times as Christians within the Christian walk. But as Christ is challenging us this morning, he says, if you're not with me, you are against me. So Christ is saying there is no room for gray, either you're black or you're white. And the question that I want to pose this morning is to say, so how do we find ourselves in the white zone? Now, Ellen White says, in the book Steps to Christ, page 46, we are not to halter between two opinions, but to be decided, to be wholehearted, and to be unwavering in our allegiance to God. This reminds me of the man Elijah on the mount. He says, make a choice this day. If Yahweh is God, worship him. But if Baal is God, what? Worship him. And he says, for how long will you keep on limping between two opinions? So this is the call that is coming to us to say, how long, my Machando, are you going to be limping between two opinions? How long are you going to remain stuck in the gray zone? If Christ is God, then what? Worship him. One of the challenges that I've seen in youth leadership is that sometimes we complain as youth leaders about the youth that we are leading, but many a times we are the ones to blame. Many a times, if we are to really do an objective self-introspection, we are the ones to blame. We blame the young people, the way that they are coming dressed, pathfinders. They want to lure the counselors and the directors. But we are the ones to blame. How long shall we keep on limping? What I want us to understand is that it is important for us as the leaders to stand on principle. As we stand on principle, as we stand on the white side, it becomes easier for those that we lead to follow in that way. Now, if we look at in the world that we are living right now, in the society that we are living right now, there are so many gray areas. Have you noticed that? The world presents so many what? So many gray areas. There are so many issues that when we look at the contemporary world, they are neither black nor white. They are somewhere in the gray zone. Maybe let me just pose a question to you as leaders. What areas have you seen that are gray? Areas and issues that affect us in the church or outside that just seem gray, neither here nor there. And we are not too sure. Which areas have we seen? Neither black nor white. Neither black nor white. We want to bring these things closer, so that I want us to understand, so that as we are leading the youth from today, we are in a better position. I saw a hand there. Issues of dressing, for example. Where is the gray area? Sometimes we ask, how short is short? That becomes gray. Yes, I'm wearing my uniform. And it's nice, it's a master guide uniform, youth leader uniform. And you're telling me my uniform is short. How short is short? Now we are living in postmodernism, the age of subjective reality, where I give my own definition of short, my own definition of tight. What other areas are gray? Yes. Issues of music. When we talk of Christian music, or let me not even say Christian music, when we talk of good music and bad music, what is good music? What is bad music? What is Adventist music? What is music that is not Adventist? Any other areas that are gray? Any other areas that we know? Yes, Mama? Language. All right? Issues of language that we use, chayo. Auntie, sometimes we are, sometimes there is this thing. I remember there's a point when someone was presenting, and then they said a certain word, and people were like, is that word really suitable for the pulpit or it's for the street? And language has now become, for us to define what this is pulpit appropriate or this is formal, this is informal, it's now what? Neither here nor there. Gray areas. Any other gray area that you can think of? Any other gray area? Yes? Lifestyle issues, auntie. How to live, how not to live. All these are neither here nor there. So you realize that in this world that we are living, as Christians, there are so many areas that are gray. So you realize that the young people that you are leading, be it junior or senior youths, there are so many areas and issues that they will come to you and say, you know what, this is a gray area. I've seen issues, for example, about social media. The people that we are leading now, this is a social media generation, isn't it? Social media generation. When we are looking at social media itself, part of the areas that become gray are, how do we use social media? I remember at the time when this Facebook thing started, in the early or something 2000s, and I used to fellowship at a certain church at that point, and the elders would always say, social media and they would get all emotional about Facebook and they were not on Facebook, they didn't understand what Facebook was about, but they would get all emotional about how Facebook is yechikara. Then you go and worship on the other side. You get them, you get there, and so Facebook is okay, the church is even on Facebook and so on. And right now, everyone is on what? On Facebook. So when we look at basically the issue of social media, it can be a gray area to say, is it good or is it what? Is it bad? What we use social media for? Mazvano, I think the trend is content creation, isn't it? What content are we posting on social media? So one day you'll be on TikTok and you see the young person that you are leading, the 15-year-old Pathfinder, Shepherdess Moyo, the 15-year-old Pathfinder that you lead at City Center. You're on TikTok and you're doing your whatever. Then you see your 15-year-old Pathfinder doing also a twerking video challenge on TikTok. They're on TikTok doing twerking video challenges. And you're going to ask them, but video yako boy, but shepherdess, matoita can you cut TikTok? But in count TikTok, and then they are saying, but TikTok is TikTok. So these are many gray areas. Sometimes you realize that some of these things, when we're talking of the use of social media, sometimes whatever is posted, for example, is to generate likes and followers, isn't it? So the young people that we are leading are going to gravitate towards where they get more likes so that they release dopamine when they get 10,000 likes and when they have what? 20,000 followers. This is the generation that we are leading, aren't we? Besides social media, when we look at relationships themselves, this has also become a gray area in the generation that we are living in. Back then, years ago, I think when Anamai Machando were dating, I think it was almost black and white what you do, what you did with Albert in your relationship. I think it was black and white. If you did otherwise, you did what you knew. It was clear. Auntie? But now the youth that we are leading, now they will come and ask you, what's wrong with kissing and touching? After all, it's not sex. Right? They're going to come to you and ask, you say we should not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. But this guy is a believer. Actually, he has been baptized in the Roman Catholic Church. They are a believer. So why are you saying a believer is an Adventist? Qualify. You asked, back in the day, I remember when I used to lead my youth, it was much easier back in the day. You'd not have these questions, justify, qualify, and whatnot. But this generation will ask you. They will ask you. Speaking of this relationship, some young people can say to you, you know what, Netsai? Yes, we are dating, and yes, definitely we are having sex, but you know what? We are planning on getting married. After all, I'm going to marry her anyway. I've heard a young person say to me, you know what, Netsai? You are a family therapist, and you know what is happening in marriages and how much people are divorcing in marriages. That's why personally I feel that, you know what, I think it's okay for me to really do a test drive of some sort so that I see if we are really sexually compatible, so that at least I will not be tempted to cheat on her when we are in marriage and end up divorcing. These are the things that the young people that you are leading are saying. Some will say, you know what, at least if we stay together for at least 2 years, Tombo, not are we compatible? Or we are not. Another area that I've seen also having gray areas in this generation, issues of dressing, like my brother rightly said. Now when we want to look at the standard for dressing, recently I was doing a lesson at Highlands Church. At the youth chapel, I did divine service, an afternoon lesson talking about issues of Christian standards on appearance and dress. And some of the questions that I got during the lesson and after the lesson were very interesting. So you realize that the young people that we are leading, they will ask you to say, you know what, the purpose of dressing is to cover. So if I have covered what is to be covered, I've covered. So as long as I've covered the private parts I've covered, right? Who catches feelings aona msana wangu? How short is too short? Does dressing matter anyway? After all, God looks at the heart. Gray areas. Issues of moral dilemmas. Now this is the one where even us as youth leaders are also caught. Because when we talk of moral dilemmas, these are issues that definitely usually aren't either black or white. These are moral dilemmas, aren't these are moral dilemmas, and you are thinking, Kuti, should I not? There may be no verse that strictly says do not. And there isn't a verse also which is saying do. So what do I do? Another issue. All right. So the world really presents so many gray areas that we see. But my question, and the question that I want us to be able to answer this morning, is to say, what are we saying as youth leaders around issues of what? Of gray areas. And what is really important for us when we are looking at issues of gray areas is to be able to empower the youth that we lead to be able to stand firm on issues of principle. So there are so many challenges that we are going to meet in the journey of youth leadership. There are so many complexities that are there in this life. But how then do we navigate these complexities and these unclear areas? One thing that can help us when we want to navigate these things is to look for biblical clarity. Is to look for what? For biblical clarity. To say we are not sure where this is, but what can guide us is biblical clarity. Now, Psalm 119 verse 130 says, the unfolding of your word gives light, and it gives understanding to the simple. Psalms 119 verse 130. It says, the unfolding of your word gives light, and it gives understanding to the what? To the simple. You know, when we are talking of these areas that are neither black nor white, one thing that I've realized is that there are certain things that we end up saying, especially in our Adventist circle. Issue controversial. How many topics have we had since controversial? All of these issues that you raise, controversial. But the Bible is saying the word gives us light, and it gives us understanding, giving understanding even to the simple. So as we require my PhD, my masters, master guide, what is God's position? The word of the Lord lays things what? Things clear. Now Ellen White says, I want you to listen to this one. The Great Controversy, page 7 says, the Bible is our guide, it's our counselor, and it's our infallible authority. So whenever we are seeking clarity on gray areas, let us go back to the what? To the Bible. Sola scripturant. But unfortunately, as youth leaders, when we are leading our youth and they come with issues that are not clear, many a times we are not referring them back to the Bible. What do? Controversy, what do we do? Many a times we give them answers based on our personal perceptions, based on our personal biases, based on our own prejudices, based on our own preferences. So if the young person comes and asks you on the question of dress, you are simply going to answer them an answer which is self-preserving. Because if you give an answer that is contrary to what you are doing, it becomes an issue, right? Because they will say, but you. So as we are guiding the young people, as we are leading the young people, let us remember to go back to the Bible and to seek for what? For clarity. All right. Now, 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 18 to 14 says, be on your guard and stand firm in the faith. Be on your guard and stand firm on the what? On the faith. Now, the reason why Scripture is saying we need to be on guard is because things are not often as easy as they look. Do you know that when we are waking up in the morning and posting these social media statuses of verses and quotations, and it really seems like the Christian journey is so easy, like it's a walk in the park. Have you realized? When we are wearing our uniform, when we are saying Happy Sabbath, it seems so easy, right? But it's not as easy as it looks. No one talks about the challenges of the true journey of discipleship. No one talks about it, right? Therefore, we need to stand on our what? On our guard and be faithful. Ellen White says in the book Testimonies to the Church, volume 6, page 122, we must stand as firm as a rock and as unwavering in our faith as we can. So after we are getting biblical clarity on certain issues, sometimes when the Bible gives us clarity on gray areas, some of the clarity that we get may not be very comfortable. Have you come across certain biblical truths that are not very comfortable? That are very uncomfortable to you. Very uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. But when we realize these biblical truths and get biblical clarity on issues, it's our duty to then stand firm. But how do we stand firm? Standing firm requires commitment, it requires courage, and it requires what? Conviction. So standing firm is easier said than done. Standing on the white page is easier said than what? Than done. Because these are issues of commitment, courage, and conviction. So you first have to be convicted as a leader in that truth. Otherwise, you not lead the young people in that way because you yourself are not convicted. Have you had my leaders who are not, you know what? Not church, vegetarian, my leader, why? Because they have no conviction themselves in the youth message. So when they are teaching even the young people, let's say SYL on 10 topics, and there's a topic there on dressing, on LGBTQI, on what, you're going to be training them and say, panyadze dressing next. Why? Because you don't have conviction in what you are teaching. So we need ourselves to first become what? Convicted before we want to go and convince these young people. And sometimes in the manner that we lead these young people, we are not conviction, or this person is not even committed to what they are saying. You know, when we look at the issue of biblical clarity and this issue of standing firm on principle, it reminds me of the young man Joseph. He was deeply convicted that I will not fornicate and thou shalt not commit adultery. So because he was convicted in this truth, the moment when opportunity came, what did he do? He simply fled. He refused to commit what? Fornication and adultery with Potiphar's wife. So this is the commitment that standing on principle requires. So sometimes standing on principle and being committed will actually come with some negative consequences. What I want us to understand is that the journey to discipleship has got its costs. There is always the cost of discipleship that you have to pay. Either you're going to lose certain people, you're going to lose certain opportunities, you are going to lose something. There is always a cost to what? To discipleship. Joseph had to lose the job. He had to be in prison because he had stand firm on what? On principle. Reminds me of Daniel. In Daniel chapter 3, he says, you know what? I will not eat of the king's meat. I will not. Give me pulse and water for how many days? For 10 days. Commitment and conviction. Now, how then can we empower the youths to stand firm on principle? So we cannot just talk about black or white nor gray when we don't know how to then practically implement this in junior youth and in senior youth leadership. So point number one, how we can empower our youths. Number one is to be able to model the biblical values that we teach them. Many of us, Tiriana, do as I say, not as I do. So unfortunately, at the end of the day, leadership yakadaro will not bring forth much fruit. Because these people learn through observational learning, especially vari junior youth. And itika nyango kamudza wakamira pai kuti izvazvitwi kana uchizviita salida, it will not make sense to them. So let us go and model the biblical values that we want to teach these young people. So this is why Ellen White says, we do not just teach by precept, but also by what? By example. Then point number 2 is to teach the biblical principles. So after modeling the biblical principles, let's then go ahead and teach the biblical what? The biblical principles. And then also let's go and encourage open discussion around gray areas. So the challenge that we have is we just want to leave the gray areas untouched because we are afraid of the controversies that they will bring up. We are afraid of debates. But at the end of the day, we are leading the youths. If we leave the gray areas gray, especially when the youths inquire for clarity from us, we are doing them what? Injustice, aren't we? Because they are looking up to us for direction and for guidance as their leaders. So let us encourage open discussion, and it is not wrong to be in dialogue with our youths. Kuto discussa. Handitika inzwa kuti iwo vari kuti kudii uye anofunga kuti kudini about the issue of what? Of rights. Then as you are able to spot maybe some errors or whatever, you can then freely what? Discuss. But the challenge that we have as youth leaders that I want us to move away from is we avoid having open discussions because already we have our fixed positions. Saka tinotongoenda kuti ndoda kunovaudza mayuth emazuva akaoma musoro da kunovaudza problem vafana ivava. That's the approach that we use, auntie. Da kunovaita sei Let us go kuno leader my youth. Tisina pfungwa yekuti they are in error. Ndozvanzi mai machando earlier on, thou shalt not what? Judge. Because sometimes you don't know why the youth hold the beliefs that they hold. Go and engage them. What do you think about LGBTQI? They're going to share what they think, and then from there, you're going to discuss with them. So let us also as leaders be able to create a safe space. Let us discuss, but you know, as they share their thoughts and opinions, my youth let us create a safe space for the youth to be able to share their thoughts and what? And feelings. Open up. Munongo kaona zvenyu chido. Zvipiko. Ko zvakazotaura kati tichadiscuss pornography. Zvakazotaura. Maakutofamba nani? Maakutofamba nayo. And chido paachazvinzwa kuti wakataura nyaya akataura kulesson yepornography. What is going to happen? They will realize that you as a leader are not a safe space, and they will lose faith in you and trust in you. So you wonder, why is it that my youth are open up? Why my pathfinder asinga open up? But are you creating the right environment for opening up? Then also provide opportunities to them for service and also foster a supportive community. Then Joshua chapter 24 verse 15 says, choose for yourselves this day whom you will save. And Ellen White says, we have the power of choice, and our choices determines our destiny. So we need to make the young people understand that every choice that they make has eternal consequences. So even if it's a gray area that you cannot fully give an answer as a leader, but just remind them that God has given us the power of what? Of choice, even on issues that may seem gray. But the choice that they will make in that dilemma or in that gray area has got eternal what? Eternal consequences. The youth can be at a certain point where they are not able to make good and sound judgment. And they may be struggling because of mistakes, but provide guidance to them. And at the end of the day, they also need to understand that there are consequences to certain what? To certain decisions. And as leaders, let's remember, we were once in their what? In their shoes. And I think if you want to think going backwards, I think we can also relate with certain things that our parents, our leaders once told us. And we suffered the what? The consequences. Then, of course, if they choose to compromise, they also need to understand that compromise itself also has its own consequences. Revelation 3 verse 16 says, so because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I will spit you out of my mouth. And Ellen White says, to compromise with evil is to invite its power into our own lives. Therefore, compromise can lead us to spiritual lukewarmness, and of course, compromise will lead us to separation from God. So as we are leading our young people, these are the truths and the realities that we need to remember, and with which we need to empower the what? The young people. And let us remember that these issues are not just about the young people. It begins with us as the what? As the leaders. So as I come to a close of my presentation, Testimonies for the Church, volume 6, page 124 says, we must stand separate from the world. We must stand separate from the what? Separate from the world. And we must remain untainted by its spirit. So if we are to be separate from the world, we are standing in a clear position that, no, you know what? We are standing with the Lord. We are not standing with you. And we need to remain untainted by the spirit of the world. So let us empower ourselves as youth leaders and also empower the youth that we live to be able to stand firm on principle. May God bless you.
Sokora Jesu, kutaurira, uya Pinzandanga Ramuponesi Jesu nyenye Yabaiwa Chakanyilese Makarasika Muvaratiza Kuna Jesu Kutungamira Muionzira Yeruponeso Neupenyu Yendai kure Unzai wafambi kumusha Pinzandanga Rambu ponesi Jesu nyenye Yabaiwa Ndizo ndinona Ngekuti Jesu wangidaida kumtera kubabatira vakarasika nekuna Jesu kuaunza yendai kure Unzai wafambi kumusha Pinzandanga Ramuponesi Jesu nyenye Yabaiwa